So it's funny because I was thinking about this topic, and when I selected this one, I was like, this is perfect because I was just at my friend's house this weekend, and me and two of my friends were all therapists. We usually get together. We try to get together like once a month, but people be having lives, and so we just try to get together as frequently as possible. And so we had met up, and we were just kind of chilling, hanging out at her house, and her sister was there, and so we were kind of talking about children and things like that, and we got on this topic of the other two don't have children, and I'm the only one that does have children. And I was like, y'all can't have children because then your whole life is going to shift and y'all aren't going to have time for me anymore. And I was like, y'all should have been had children so that now that you could just be living and enjoying your life at this point versus like having to like think about pregnancy and raising babies. I'm like, that's going to suck. That's going to destroy everything. And then we were talking about how some people choose to have kids early versus some people choose to have kids later. And and I always thought of it as I want this out the way, so that I can, live the rest of my life when I'm older. I want to be young and youthful and being able to run around and do things with my kids. And then by the time that I'm stable, this sounds so bad. By the time I'm stable and have money, I want my kids to be like grown so that I can enjoy my stability and my money. But then there's some people who they're like, no, let me build myself during my 20s, early 30s. Let me stabilize myself. Let me experience life. These are the things that I should be doing. It's like I should be having fun. I should be looking for my partner. I should be, buying a home. I should be settling in my career and then having children. But I was like, but then you're going to be old trying to run around with these kids. And but I think about like my clients, and so many of them, they'll come in and say like, "Oh, I feel so behind," and it's like, why? Whose standards are you basing yourself? Whose standards are you basing things on? Because according to me, I was like, I love what you're doing because you're taking the time to like experience life and not have to worry about like children at this time. But on the other end, you could have did like the path that I took, where it's like, let me get these kids out the way, because they also act as motivators for me to kind of change and grow and do better. And so I just always think about they're like, oh, I should have done this by now. And I'm always like, says who?
Yeah, seriously. I find like when I'm talking to a lot of clients, there's a lot of social and cultural norms when it comes to milestones like
Mhm.
marriage and having kids. And I always like try to, challenge that or ask questions about that and get curious, like, where is this timeline coming from? Is it coming from your parents, your culture, like your peers? And a lot of times clients will pause and go, I don't know where it's coming from. And I'm like, well, we need to dive deeper into that because maybe that's just not in alignment for like present you.
Mhm. And even when I look at like the timelines that they have, they're like, oh, I should be, like I was saying, like, oh, finish school, find a partner, get married. And I was like, do you even want any of those things? Do you want to go to school? Do you want to go down this degree path? Do you want to go study abroad? Do you want to um, get married? Do you really want to buy a house? Because one of the things that I realized about myself a couple of years ago, and I was like, I didn't want any of this. And but at this point, I already had the house. I already had the career. I wanted a career. I needed to make money, but I'm like, I had the career. I had the businesses. I had, the four children. The white picket fence. I had all those things. But then I was like, I want like a penthouse in the city with floor to ceiling windows in the city, and I want to be able to just like go and live my life and travel and things like that. And I was like, nobody even presented that as an option to me growing up. It was very much you go to high school, you go to college, you find somebody to marry, you buy a house, you have children, you get your dog, and you live like that for the rest of your life. Nobody ever presented any other options to me. And so when my clients come in and they say, oh, I should be here, and I'm said, is that what you want? And they're like, huh? I have a choice. Yes, you do. You have a choice. And so I always encourage them to like look at your life. Do you even like children? Do you even plan on staying in this area? Are you finished with your education? Do you want to study your education, and will it take you to a different city, or a different state? It's like really look at your life and what you want. Are you a selfish person? You probably shouldn't have children. Just being able to kind of think of that. Are you frugal? Do you know how much it costs to travel with children? And so it's always interesting, like when people don't even recognize like the options that they have.
Yeah, for sure. I find like some of my clients will actually focus their milestones of their timeline on perfection.
Hmm.
And they have this idea in their head, and it's very grand. And I almost kind of describe it like a mirage. And I'm like, well, tell me the details about this perfect timeline. And they're like, well, there's kids, there's a house, there's this, there's that. And I'm like, okay, well, how are we going to get there? And they're
Hmm.
like, I'm not sure. That's why I'm in this place now. And I think about their nervous system and their stress levels. And then that's where the negative talk comes in. So I think when you base your timeline off of perfection, it can really cause a lot of harm and make you feel like you're behind and you're not doing the things that you're supposed to do on time.
Yeah, and thinking about myself, I'm the classic perfectionist. And when I was even thinking about like, I visualized it. I wanted four children. I wanted three boys and a girl. I wanted the boys to come first to be able to protect the girl. I had it all laid out. I wanted my two-story home in the suburbs. I wanted to be able to only work in the hours that my kids were at school. And so I would be able to take them to school and pick them up from school. I wanted the dog. I always wanted the white picket fence, the actual white picket fence, but then I was like, none of these suburbs have white picket fence. I can't just go and put a white picket fence around the house. Um, but I really wanted that, and it was just very much laid out. And even like when I'm thinking back to it now, I, crazy enough, I knew there was supposed to be a husband there, but I never even imagined who that person would be, what they would be like, or what I needed from a person, because it wasn't about the needs. It was about creating this picture of like this perfect life for me.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people do that. They want to create this picture that maybe their childhood or their parents kind of, passed down to them. Also, like the comparison with social media, sometimes I think that people will alter their picture and go, well, that's what their picture looks like. So I want my picture to look like that, only knowing that things on social media is just a snapshot.
Hmm.
If you are going off of snapshots of other people's lives, you're going to be missing a lot of the details and the challenges and them being resilient during those times.
Hmm. It makes me think about this one creator family, and they weren't trying to they weren't trying to fake it until they make it kind of thing, but it could be perceived that way. But they were talking about how they would rent a house to kind of do their content in, and they was like, in order for me to get these brand deals and to be able to grow in the way that I wanted to, I had to create the aesthetics around it. And so we spent the money to rent this house, knowing that one day we will be able to buy our own home. And so they had a business plan, but so many people will just go and rent these peer spaces and be like, oh, that's my house, or go stand by some random car that's not even theirs. And it's like, y'all are just trying to kind of create this image of what you think that you should have at 23 years old.
Yeah, and that can really trip people up because if they're trying to live this life that's really not in alignment with them, then things are going to fall apart or they're just not going to work out. I just think it really lacks like the people being intentional about it, um, which can be really tough because then when things don't work out, then you can, reform back to the negative self talk.
Yeah. It makes me think about a conversation I've had with somebody before, and we talked about like the things that come easy versus the things that come hard. And usually the things that come hard are the things that aren't meant for us, and we're trying to force them. And I think about how many people are looking at, say, social media or their family, and they're trying to push this whole like, I should have this, I should have that type of thing. And it's so hard for them, and they're fighting against, like, they're running into traffic basically, and it's just like getting hit one like one by one, um, and not being able to kind of really stand up and ground themselves because like that path wasn't meant for you. And I always seem like the universe is going to get you back on your path one way or another. And so it's very much of a, if things are feeling like super difficult and you're running into all these obstacles, that should that you think that you should have may not be your should. And so it's like being able to kind of step back and say, is this actually the path for me? Or am I just trying to do what everybody else wants me to do or what everybody else is doing? And that's why it's so hard because I don't enjoy this. This is not part of my plan for myself.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think when you're on your path, if you're very rigid and you're not like going with the flow and paying attention to the signs and the universe, because, I really feel like the universe is like helping us out and guiding us. But if you have this strict, rigid plan, you might miss out on opportunities that could have been like really abundant or really great. So I think it's such a fine balance between going with the flow and being very rigid. And when I'm talking to my clients, one thing that's like really helpful is I encourage them to create vision boards. That way they can like visualize, like you said earlier, what they want their timeline to look like or what they want to incorporate in their lifestyle. Then their homework assignment will be, well, what small action steps can you take towards this? And planning, research, that is all incorporated and that counts as action too.
I've been working with clients on being able to kind of like script an ideal day in their lives because I was like, it gives you like a very clear like visualization of like the little things. The when do you wake up in the morning? When do you go to bed at night? What is your morning routine like? Do you even wake up in the morning? Are we waking up in the afternoon? Do you eat breakfast? Do you skip breakfast? Do you go for a run in the morning? Like really looking at it. And then it becomes, okay, what are we going to do to get to that life? And so it's not even like, oh, I have to have this, I have to have this house, I want this career, I want to put on my vision board going to this school. And it's like, no. Sometimes your vision board can be like sitting in a person swinging in a hammock with a cup of coffee because you want an easy life. It doesn't have to always be like what everybody else is putting in terms of like, oh, this career and things like that. I remember one vision board that I did a long time ago, and it's always funny because I was like, we don't have magazines as much anymore. But I was doing like the old school vision board, cutting out pictures of the magazine. And I remember one of the pictures that I put on there was it was like a mom and her son just in the kitchen. They were like cooking together. And I was like, I want to do more of this because my son, he likes to cook also. And he bakes and I bake and things like that. And I was like, well, this is something that we can do more of together is this. And so it wasn't like, oh, this career goal or having this certain type of dog or whatever. It was like, I want this experience. I want this quality time with somebody that I care about too.
Yeah, for sure. I love that story. It makes me think about how asking questions about your future self is helpful. Like, what is something you can do to help your future self? Or what action steps can I take to get to my future self? Or what will my future self be thinking or doing? Or how does she or he act? I think sometimes that's helpful to kind of guide you on your path and remind you that you are on the path, because I think if we're just focusing on like perfectionism or the path, then it can feel very robotic and it's almost like checking off boxes and not living like intentionally and being present.
Yeah. It's something I was thinking about. I've been talking to people about like their morning routines and or their afternoon routines, what they do when they come home. And I was telling them, I was like, don't do it where it's like super structured. And it's like it doesn't have to be I wake up at this time, I do this, I do that, because then it becomes a task. It becomes these checklists, these something that is not necessarily enjoyable. And so I always tell them, think of a variety of things that you may want to do in the morning, whether it's work out or read a book or, go for a walk or cook a breakfast or something like that. And put all this like pieces of paper, popsicle sticks, whatever. And when you wake up in the morning, if you already know what you want to do, go do it. But if you don't, just draw something. And so it doesn't create this like very rigid robotic life. It's like I can kind of just go with the flow of wherever I feel, but I also have options ready for myself so I don't feel the pressure of having to make a decision. And all these options are things I already enjoy. not creating the rigid structure in your routines, make so that you're not creating that robotic should list of I should be checking these off. Should be waking. I didn't say this, but should be waking up at 5 a.m. in the morning. I should be um, doing my journaling in the morning. I should be doing morning meditation. I should be doing all of these things, and it's like, says who? I am so big on that. Says who?
Yeah, seriously. I think another thing that's helpful is like really focusing on like your wins and your progress. I feel like I talk to a lot of people that focus on results but versus the progress, and like think about all the progress you've made if you don't take credit for it, and the only thing you take credit for are the results. Like it's just going to be less fulfilling, and then once you get that thing, it's like, okay, I got the thing, but I'm not feeling the feelings, and it's because a lot of people don't focus on the progress and like giving themselves their flowers like as they go along their journey.
Mhm. It makes me think about like sometimes I'm having my conversations with ChatGPT, and it's it's like I'll say something, but I was like, I don't know what I want to do with this. And Chat will tell me, sometimes it's okay to just kind of sit with the thought versus having to always do something with it. And I think that people are so much of like, let me turn this into a business idea. Let me do this. Let me do that. Let me do all these extra things. And it's like, sometimes we can just be, and it's okay.
Yeah, that reminds me. I'll tell my clients like, you're a human being, not a human doer. And
Hmm.
I'm like, which one have you been this week? And they're like, actually, I've been a human doer and I'm stressed and I'm burned out. And I'm like, okay, so how can we recharge more? How can we like be more? How can we be a human being? So sometimes I think those analogies are like helpful to kind of sink in people's brains.
Yeah. And in relation to like what you were talking about, um, the positive things. So in relation to what you were talking about and being able to like identify some of the just like the positives or the things that you have like accomplished versus like the end results of it. And so when I'm thinking about like I just had a statement or I just had a thought, but I didn't do anything with it. And it's like you don't have to have the result. Just being able to acknowledge that, hey, I made this connection between these two things and it was absolutely beautiful. And that small win for the day, is enough.
For sure. Because I think there's certain points where people are creating ideas or they're researching or they're planning. And I think the most people I talk to don't consider that a win. They don't consider that part of the process. Like, oh, I haven't done anything yet. And I'm like, okay, so say we're all in a race and you're right here in the middle of the race because you've created, you've planned, you've researched, and they're like, yeah, but I haven't done anything. But I said, but think about how far you are along in the race compared to someone that thought of the plan and then said, I can't do that. I'm like, so you're so much further ahead than you even acknowledge compared to other people in the race.
Yeah. It makes me think about like myself with like ADHD too. And like when you were saying, oh, you research, you had a plan. I was like, that's amazing because getting my thoughts together to come up with an idea and putting a plan behind it and doing some research and starting to like establish something, like that's like an amazing kind of thing to actually accomplish versus like I have 5 million ideas, things going on in my head, and I do nothing with them. And so, like you're saying, like being able to put together a plan, a structure of something, even if it's just like a rough draft, that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And I also think it's really important for people to constantly check in with their expectations because a lot of times people's expectations aren't realistic, they're not measurable. Like you're just setting these high expectations and they're very like murky, they're not very clear. So I think checking in with your expectations and also realizing that life is about ups and downs, it's about doing and resting and recharging. Um, Giving yourself that ability to rest and appreciating the rest and knowing that rest is still part of being productive.
And and even like when I think about like the whole expectations and therapy and people in their healing journey, and I hear so many of them come in and they'll be like, "Oh, well, I was sad again," and it's like it's okay to be sad again. You're not gonna be in this place where everything is just perfect. And so just because we got you to a place where you were feeling better does not mean that you're not going to have, adjustments in your mood. That's typical. It happens. Healing is not linear. It's a all over the place type of thing, and you never know. But just as we like look at it in the whole totality of it, you get to a point of healing. And it may be ugly, it usually is ugly, but you still get there. And I think so many people will come in and they have these expectations that things are just going to be just like this magical linear process of I'm getting better and I'm improving and things like that. And like sometimes you just need to rest and you need to not do anything and you need to just allow your emotions to be. That also made me think about the concept of rest and people being upset with themselves, like doom scrolling or just like binge watching TV. And I was like, don't beat yourself up about those things because those things give your nervous system a break. And so you think about it as like, oh, it's just me watching trash TV. But for that 3 hours that you're watching trash TV, your nervous system isn't like going crazy. It has relaxed. And so it's kind of like what we do when we sleep too. It relaxes itself. And you need that. And so being able to kind of recognize, like, check your expectations and your need for rest and things like that is like a very big part of um, living for yourself.
Yeah. I think it's also really helpful when clients are like scrolling, checking in on like your relationship with scrolling. If you feel like it's a negative thing, then you're going to feel guilty about it. You're going to feel like I'm doing a bad thing, but you're going to scroll, you're going to get on social media. So why
Mhm.
not give yourself permission to fully enjoy it? And you can create some checks and balances. So that could look like, for me, I'll say something like I'm setting my intentions to learn a new skill, or I'm setting my intentions to just laugh for 20 minutes.
Mhm.
And that way I won't feel bad about what I'm doing and I can just actually just be.
Yeah. And even like when you say, setting your expectations or your intentions around it, I think about one of the things I tell people is I will forever scroll. And I'd say that because my scrolling is done with purpose. It is the accumulation of information. And so I love to take in information, even if it's just like a little bit here, a little bit there. And so every time I pick up my phone and I swipe up, I'm picking up new information. Now, sometimes I'm not, and I'm just like swiping past that one. But the expectation for me is I'm going to learn something. I may not learn a whole complete skill, but I learned something about something. And so I never look at scrolling as anything negative because I know I'm going to always take something away from it. Now, if your algorithm is just like dance videos, the only thing you may pick up is like a new like move or something like that. But the way that I have mine set up, I'm always going to learn something.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's also helpful to consider like having some, maybe two or three affirming statements that kind of help you along your journey. If you know that this is a reoccurring thing of, I don't feel like I'm, on time, or I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, or I feel behind, because those affirming statements can just kind of remind you of the fact that you are on a journey and it's unfolding and there's not like necessarily a finish line.
Hmm. And what I do all the time is kind of like when I talked about like the scripting is I always tell clients is to identify what your ideal lifestyle looks like. And so when you have a picture of that, it makes it so much easier to kind of check in with yourself and say, am I on the path to reaching this ideal lifestyle? It doesn't say when or anything like that, but I'm on that path. It's it's one thing I think about with like I want to eventually move out of the country. People are like, when are you doing that? I was like, I don't know, but it's gonna happen, and I'm doing stuff to be able to line up for that. And so my son, he's about to be a senior, and so right now it's like, okay, scholarships. Let's get on top of all this stuff. I was like, I need a list of everything that you've done since you were born, to be able to like help him with like these scholarships. And people are like, but aren't you supposed to be focused on moving out the country? And I'm like, if I don't have to pay for college, I have more money to move out of the country.
Mhm.
And so it becomes those little steps that you may think it's nothing at all, and like, oh, you're just helping because you're a parent. No, all of this aligns with my lifestyle goals of leaving the country. And so if I lose 100 grand sending him off to college, that's 100 grand that I could have used to move out of the country.
Yeah, it's like everything is connected. One other thing that I notice when I'm working with clients that feel like they're behind or they're not on this specific timeline is a lot of them tend to punish themselves or, struggle with that negative self-talk. So I think another thing that would be helpful is really checking in with your core beliefs, whether you do it as something with yourself or with a therapist, or if you're feeling behind. I think therapy is a great option to figure out why is it that you feel like that, and
Hmm.
maybe you're not truly behind.
Yeah. I think especially like when you think about like different cultural groups and things like that, and it's like you should be on this track to be able to get this job. And so if you're not in school working on this, or if you have established a job and you're still looking for other things, and it's like, well, why are you looking for other things? Just be happy with where you are. And so, but that's also part of those core beliefs that a lot of people are raised with, and with parents who stayed in jobs for 30 years until they retired. And it's like, who says even that you have to stay in a job forever? Who says that you can't change your mind of what you want to do? Maybe you are an attorney for like 5 years, but then after that you decide to like open a nonprofit agency. And it's like you can always change, but so many other things that like maybe even our parents did don't align with like what the possibilities are for us. And so being able to recognize of like, yes, that works for them, and they probably embedded into me that I should just get a job and stay in that job and work it forever, but the possibilities are so much different now than what they had.
Yeah, for sure. And also acknowledging that, like, your present self may want certain things, but as you go through your journey, like, things are going to change. Like, your
Mhm.
desires are going to change, your goals are going to change, your circumstances are going to change. So it's really like always kind of like having a non-planned plan. Like, I do have a plan, but I also have some wiggle room in there because I know that that's the thing about life. Like, change is going to happen, and I'm not sure what my lifestyle is going to look like in 20 years.
Mhm. And it's funny because like clients will come in and it's like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. And it's like, you don't have to figure it out all right now. And it's like, I'm not going to sit here and map out your life with you. We can focus on the next 5 years if you want to do the 5 years, but like trying to determine what you're going to do for the next 30, 40, 50 years of your life, it's crazy.
It is. And think about how much being on this timeline, people miss out from being present, really soaking up those quality times and like certain precious moments with family and friends because, hypothetically, say you are getting married and you're so stressed out, you don't even get to enjoy your
Mhm.
wedding party or your engagement. And you look back at the memories and it's like you really didn't get to enjoy that. So, for anyone out there that is struggling with feeling like they are behind, either learning how to meditate or practicing some mindfulness is like definitely going to be helpful with not focusing so much on like what's ahead of you.